Tell me if you have ever had a similar experience to this. I recall when I was in my early 20s or so, I was with my family at the beach, and I refused to take off my shirt because, well, I was kind of embarrassed. I was ashamed because I looked at the people on the blanket next to us, and there was this cowboy, and he had the muscles. I knew he was a cowboy because he wore a cowboy hat. Had on his cowboy hat, his swimming trunks, his sandals, whatever. And there was me. By comparison, I thought, oh my goodness, people are going to think I am so out of shape. I'm just going to keep my shirt on. So I was ashamed. Well, you know what? After maybe a half hour, I don't know, I started getting hot. And I thought about it. And I said, who cares? I don't know these people. They don't know me. We'll never see each other again. If they think I'm out of shape, do I really care what they think? Why am I so embarrassed and so ashamed of what I look like? So I took off my shirt. And I just happened to notice when I did that the cowboy on the blanket next to us took off his hat. And guess what? He was bald. I mean, we're talking, he had a little hair around the side, but we're talking Dr. Phil bald. And it occurred to me that he was wearing his hat for the same reason that I was wearing my shirt. Kind of embarrassed. Don't want people to see us. By comparison, I guess in his mind, and I'm not a mind reader, I don't know this is what he was thinking, but in his mind, he was probably thinking, all these guys with their hair, and here I am, looking like a Hare Krishna, except for a little bit on the side. And he was probably thinking the same thing I was thinking. Who cares what people think? So have you had one of those life experiences where you were so embarrassed, you were so ashamed, simply because you're comparing yourself to other people, and you cared what they thought for no apparent reason, but it's just a little bit boy, I don't want to say selfish, but yeah, we've got egos. We care about ourselves, about self-esteem, and we don't want to let down our guard even when it's silly not to do so. Well, with that thought in mind, have you ever been embarrassed or have you ever been ashamed of having Asperger syndrome? Well, let's talk about that in a little bit of detail. This is not going to be a very long presentation, but I've got 6 things. 3 things when Aspie should not be ashamed, and 3 things when, well, yeah, maybe we should be a little bit ashamed. And the last one of the 6, 3 of each, the last one of the 6, is one you're going to want to really pay close attention to because that's what ties this all together. So when should Aspies not be ashamed? Well, number 1 is when you can't help being yourself. Why should you be ashamed of who you are? Now, sometimes, we are a little bit embarrassed because we find ourselves rocking or we try to talk to somebody. We don't really want to make small talk, but out it comes because we feel pressure to do so, and we're just kind of embarrassed. We're ashamed because we simply do not have that innate ability to carry on the simplest of conversations, like everybody else can, or everybody else seems to be able to. It's kind of like comparing yourself with a cowboy in the blanket next to you. You want to fit in. You want to be part of the landscape so that you are normal, because you feel like you are less than normal because you can't make small talk like everyone else, because you can't make eye contact as effectively as everyone else, because you come across as being like, I don't know, a space alien, a lizard, one of those lizard people they talk about, and so you're just kind of embarrassed of who you are. But when you stop and think about it, nature has made you this way. Now, what would happen if everybody was ashamed of who they are? And you know what? I think to some degree, just about everybody is. I recall a couple years ago, I was, where was I? I think I was I was in I was going to say a Burger King, but I was in a hamburger store somewhere. And there was a pretty good crowd there, but there was this pretty teenage girl. And I overheard her conversation with an older woman, and this teenage girl was explaining how embarrassed she was with her nose. And I looked at her and I thought, man, there's nothing wrong with this girl's nose. What is wrong with her? Well, the point being that I think everybody has their insecurities. Everybody has their moments of embarrassment. Everybody thinks, I could be a little bit more attractive. I could have a little bit better personality. Now, some people go over the top and they're just flat out narcissistic. And they think nobody's as good as they are. But when you look deep down inside of that, you discover what they're really doing is covering insecurities. Those narcissistic people, they are sometimes the most insecure people. And they go way, way, way out of the way to hide their insecurities. Think of the guy in the cowboy hat, What if he had worn a huge cowboy hat? Because he really wanted to cover his insecurities. He would draw more attention to himself doing that than if he just took off his hat. He looks more silly, with a big hat than he does with a bald head. And by the way, the guy did not look bad at all with a bald head. It was just self-reflection, I guess. I'm not a mind reader. I don't know what he was thinking, but sometimes we self-reflect. We'll talk about that some more in just a moment. Number 2 is this. When you can help being yourself, but hey, you're not hurting anybody, why should you be ashamed? Sometimes I catch myself stimming when I'm out in public, particularly in a restaurant, just sitting there doing nothing, start stimming. And I catch myself. And for years, I used to consciously try to stop. But after a therapist informed me that I did, in fact, have Asperger syndrome, that I was on the autism spectrum, somehow it occurred to me, why am I so worried about this? I mean, this is who I am. Who cares? I'm not hurting anybody. So nowadays, you see me sitting in a restaurant somewhere, you'll see me sitting there rocking back and forth. Not hurting anybody. Why should I be ashamed? Why should you be ashamed? Embrace who you are. Accept yourself for who you are, for what you are. Number 3 is this. And this seems kind of silly, but not until you dig deep down inside of it. But you should never be ashamed of being an Aspie when you are alone. Now, sometimes we have this thing where we will ruminate. We'll stop and think, and we'll stop and consider, what would life be like if I had not made that blunder that I made earlier today? And that just rolls over and over in our mind. We get real concerned about the mistake we made, the words that we said that we shouldn't have said. And we think about things. Sometimes we go back months and years, 10 years, 20 years, maybe 50 years. I'm approaching 70 years old, so I can actually remember. 50 years ago, kids come up and ask me about history, and I say, yeah, I remember that. But we sometimes ruminate about silly mistakes that we made because we are Aspies, things that we said, ways that we presented ourselves, and the people that we affected have probably forgotten about it. They're not sitting around ruminating about what you said to them. I mean, maybe they are, but if they are, that's their flaw. It's not yours. But yeah, one of the mistakes that we make, I think, and I say ashamed, maybe that's not the best word for this, but when we overthink, the term rather, overthink about things that we should not even be thinking about. I mean, okay, you made a mistake, you learn, you move on. Okay, those are times when Aspies should not be ashamed. But are there times when we should be ashamed? Well, uh, initially, when I was putting this together, I was thinking, why should I ever be ashamed of being an Aspie? I mean, that's who I am. But then when I started drilling down in my mind, it occurred to me that, there are some times when people with particular traits will use those traits to manipulate other people. I can't help myself. That's the way I was. You'll have to get over it. I'm an Aspie. What do you expect? Yeah, we should be ashamed when we do that intentionally just so we can manipulate other people, so we can get our own way. Or maybe we do it so that we can transfer our shame onto them. Yeah, projection. Vicariously, we're taking our embarrassment and we're loading it onto somebody else. We're just being a little bit, when we do that, we're just being a little bit self-centered, a little bit manipulative. And sometimes it's not a little bit, sometimes it's quite a bit. So when should Aspies be ashamed? Well, the second thing is when seeking unwarranted sympathy and empathy. Now, that's kind of like the first thing, but not exactly. I think that everybody likes to know that other people care about them. Now, this, in my mind, my way of thinking, and tell me if you disagree, but this is just kind of immature. Because when we were kids, remember that you could manipulate people by crying. You felt like you were hurt. Your feelings were hurt. And so you start bawling, you start crying, just to get your parents to pat you on the little head and maybe get yourself out of trouble. Make it seem like it's all about, oh man, it's all about me and you should care about me. But really, that's just another way of being manipulated. Now, when we do that, yeah, I think maybe we should be ashamed of misusing our traits just to solicit empathy or sympathy or both from others. Feel sorry for me because, hey, I'm an Aspie. Number 3 is this. This is the final thing, and I think this is so important, and that is this. We should be ashamed when unnecessarily embarrassing other people. Now, this may be a little bit challenging because, hey, again, we are who we are the way we are, but sometimes we don't have to do what we do or be the way we are or talk the way we talk or don't talk the way we don't talk if it hurts other people. Now, what would happen, stop and think of it in this context, what would happen if everybody did that all the time? When everybody behaved in such a way that it would just embarrass other people. Now, when we go places, in society, there are norms of behavior that is expected of us. For example, if you go to a formal dinner party, you're expected to behave in a certain manner. And if you go to a dinner party acting like you're at a birthday party, you're embarrassing people, especially people who, family and friends. You're making them look stupid because they're hanging out with you, and you really don't have to. Now, I don't know that anybody would go to that extreme where you go to a formal dinner party and you start acting like it's a birthday party. But, there are more subtle times when we can be conscious of our surroundings and, we need to learn, and I think all of us have done this, but we need to learn to adapt to the norms of our surroundings, social surroundings, the best we possibly can. And we say, who cares? I'm going to do what I want to do. I don't care who it hurts. I don't care who it embarrasses. I'm going to do it anyhow. That goes back to being like a little kid. We're just being selfish. Now, we have a lot of videos on this topic. You can see links to some of them on the screen. So, and all of these, by the way, are current. I mean, just as if we made them today, these principles never get old. So take your time, look at some of the other videos we made, and learn something.